All right, so today's piece has tendrils that go way back in the WineX family tree, the 6 degrees of wine exchange. Back in the, God, what was their first vintage? Mid-90s? Back in the mid-90s, we used to go to this big tasting up in Northern Cal every year, Zinfandel Advocates and Producers, the big ZAP tasting, they would call it every year. And this in the mid-90s, Zin was like a huge deal, right? You know, the Zin revolution, the rejuvenation of classic red Zinfandel, not sweet white Zinfandel, but classic red Zinfandel table wine was in full bloom. And we would go up there every year to scout out new producers and new opportunities. Now, while we were up there, we would also, if they weren't at ZAP, we would also kind of tool around the valley a little bit. We'd spend a couple days up in the valley, and back in the old days, before there were like 97 critics and 800 different periodicals and everything was direct to consumer off a mailing list, etc., when we did our wine research, we did it the old-fashioned way, which we would go from wine shop to wine shop up in Sonoma and Napa, and we would buy bottles. We'd literally say, what the hell is this? Put it in the cart, move on. What the hell is this? Put it in the cart, move on. Now, these two things kind of happen to combine gloriously with Dashe. This was a Zinfandel producer that we had bought their wine and also happened to have the opportunity to taste it at the Zinfandel and Producers show at the Big Zap tasting. And the one we tasted at the show and the one we tasted at home they were both spectacular. And we knew we had to call them. So we bought some of Dashe's first wines out in the market. Now, Michael and Ann Dashe are sweet, sweet people. Michael cut his chops at Ridge, little Zinfandel producer you may have heard of in whispers and in passing. Michael learned all of his mad crazy skills at Ridge, but he wanted to do things a little differently with the Dashe project. So these Zinfandels from the start were never about whomp you over the head, right? These wines were never about Anne's. His wife is French, also a brilliant wine person, and the idea here was always balance forward. What can we do with Zinfandel to make it balanced? Now, when we talk about balance, let's talk about balance with Zinfandel for a minute. By nature, Zinfandel has to be a little rich, a little ripe, and a little yummy to be balanced, right? If you pick Zin too early, you'll bump into this whole green spectrum of flavors, hens and chickens in the clusters. So you get a lot of green berries. Even sorting the green berries out, if you pick it too early, the wine's a bit green, a bit light, a bit claret-like, not really interesting to drink. Although a few producers up there might argue with me on this, but I would not listen to them. Occasionally, you do get a great Zin under 14 octane, but usually the best, most profound Zinfandels I've ever had, and you can talk to a lot of the best producers of Zinfandel on the planet, whether it's Mike Officer, Morgan Peters, etc. 14.5 to 15.2 is this wonderful window of ripeness for Zinfandel based on how you farm and based on how you work your clusters. Dashe has always been on the lower side of that spectrum, and none the worse for it. They make brilliant, beautiful, classic Zinfandels that are just effusively yummy, always ready to drink, always enjoyable, and classically Zin. Now, they do make a series of single vineyard wines. A lot of them they sell direct to consumer, old vines, Dry Creek Valley, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the deal. Ann brought in the other day their whole range, and the wine that blew me away on the table was just their Zinfandel Vineyard Select. It's a California appellated Zinfandel, like the basic appellation. And, you know, they poured the wine out and we were tasting it. Beautiful color there for Zinfandel. Well, there's a little secret to the color we'll get into in a minute. And I just remember tasting it and being like, well, damn, man, this gear's legit. And, you know, it was a hot vintage, 22. And sourcing, I think, maybe everything. And in this case, they sourced from actually a really famous vineyard for this wine. When she told me the site, I was like, repeat, come again? The Del Barba Vineyard, which it's famous amongst xenophiles, among Zin drinkers, Zin lovers. They'll know the Del Barba Vineyard. It's located in Contra Costa, and it is one of those classic sites, just like the old Klein Vineyards, just like Evangelo, these classic sites of old Zinfandel on sand, like blowing what they call deli sand soils. It's like a beach, right? It's a beach with like housing tracks next door to it and electrical wires over the top, and it's like these wonderful old beachy Zinfandel vineyards in this residential neighborhood. One of the coolest spots, very cool vineyard site, gorgeous old vineyards, perfectly happy, perfectly healthy. Now, the Del Barba family, their original plantings from the 1920s, right? Those are the old vines on the property. And then they also have young vines, which were planted in the early 80s. So even the young vines on the property are 40 plus years old, right? So this is legit old vine gear. Actually, I have a message out to Dashe right now trying to figure out if they got the old stuff or if they got the kind of old stuff. Regardless, the wine is amazing. Now, their mojo here for winemaking is all French oak, neutral barrels, 1 year and older, so no new oak in this wine, and that's exactly how they want it. New oak and Zinfandel also don't really mix too well. Kind of like new oak and Grenache. It has to be something really special for it to play well together. Otherwise, the whole neutral thing to let Zinfandel kind of pop and shine and be brambly and berry is the way to go. Now, getting back to the color, we talked about the color earlier. There is some secret weapon grape varieties in here. This wine is 85% old to potentially really old Zinfandel from the Del Barba Vineyard, but the balance is 15% Chiraldago and Tannat. What? I know, right? And this is part, the Dashe's experiment with a bunch of different grape varieties, and they got a couple different programs in place, direct to consumer, some blends, etc. And they found out that the Chiraldago and Tannat can really, really help kind of create some color and some structure to kind of prop up this really rich, yummy, bright, spicy Zinfandel from these sandy soils down in Contra Costa. So expertly blended here. And here you get the, that raspberry to cherry thing with Zinfandel. This isn't like that blackberry thing, right? They're not sticking like Petit Syrah, Alicante Boucher in here, which can spin the Zinfandel flavors towards more black fruited accents. And here we have the Chiraldago and Tannat, which they kind of spin it towards actually the fruitier aspects, the fruitier red fruit aspects of Zinfandel, which I adore, by the way. And Zinfandel in this price range for everyday gluggability, you don't want it tasting necessarily like Petit Syrah. And you don't want it too big. Then the wines get blown out and they're like kind of heavy and you're like, right? And there's like a 3% of Zinfandel that's that way, and a lot of people look at all of Zinfandel that way, painting the whole picture with the same brush, and it's not that way. This is classic, beautiful, expertly balanced Zinfandel from people that have been making Zinfandel for, no, I'm not gonna make the Dashes feel old. A while, huh? A while, decades. We've all been doing this for decades. That's why we're so damn good at what we do, right? Right? So anyway, there was fancier wine on the table that day when Anne was pouring stuff, but this was the one that lit me up like a Christmas tree. I thought the value here was absolutely sensational. This wine chimes in, I think it's under 20 bucks. I have to look. I don't even know. I was so excited when I bought it. All I know is it's in the teens, maybe a touch over 20 bucks. You'll see it when you click down below. Regardless, 92 points from Spectator. Also a big deal. For an entry-level Zinfandel in this price range, scored blind, right? They're tasting blind, right? These cats are not looking at the labels and going, oh, this is the little one, and I'm going to give it a huge score. No, they're tasting blind. And when you taste blind, that's when you get moments like this. That's when you taste the wine vis-a-vis other wines in the group, and you go, this wine really rocks for the price. And it's not about the label. It's not about the price. The bags come off, they go, holy crap, I give that 92 points. Awesome, right? And that's how they roll. So this really is legit 92-point wine. Great, great Zinfandel from the Dashe family. Completely charmed to have it in store. What a treat. And no, she didn't get back to me. So in the piece is going to be at least 40-plus-year-old vines, huh? But read the piece. If I hear back from her later and it says 100-plus, then this is the super duper stuff in here, which is even better. Oh, but I didn't tell you. Turley makes a single vineyard, Del Barba Vineyard Zinfandel. That's fancy, right? Little something something extra, a little spicy. And Morgan at Bedrock also buys this fruit to put into his Old Vine California blend. It's a very important vineyard, secret weapon vineyard, and what a treat to be tasting it for this kind of price. Cheers.